it's amazing that you're feeling so deeply, but it's like I don't think we applaud that enough for people in general, males, even females too, to like embrace vulnerability.
Yeah.
Like vulnerability is human connection.
Welcome to Something More Human. I'm Sam.
And I'm Elliot. We're a married couple exploring human connection and its impact on ours, our guests, and our listeners' lives.
Join us in creating something more human. So for those who don't know, very first issue of 20ToLife, which is Mel's magazine, Elliot was a little feature inside, and completely unrelated that we're having Mel as a guest, and issue 2 is about connection.
Seriously. That's beautiful, right? That's so cool.
We love serendipity. Like,
I feel like it's been happening a lot.
It
like
is
so
happening
much.
so much, and it like gives me goosebumps, and it's the coolest thing ever.
It really is. Totally. I agree. Well, we're excited for both of you, for real. It's cool to see you guys to do your thing, you know?
A maybe theme of this podcast will be the most broad question of what is human connection. So I'll pose it to you in the framework of what does it look like for you, and how has it maybe shifted over time? I thought human connection was like, you know, falling in love. The sparks will connect and fly when I find the right person. And moving to Denver and meeting a bunch of people, that does happen sometimes. But it doesn't happen all the time, and I'm still making friends with people it doesn't happen with right away. So it's shifted for me from like the intuitive kismet moment to actually it's just about intention and kind of reciprocal intention. So curious what it means to you and if it has shifted over time.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely shifted because I think when I was younger, I looked at connection a lot as having a lot of people around you. You know, just in general, I used to have so many friends. I was on a lot of sports teams, or like I was in musical theater and dance, and I just always felt like having those people around you is what connection was, is just like people who shared similar interests, and then building your like repertoire of friends that way, or like relationships or whatever. And as I've gotten older, I've carried like a really big tribe of people with me, but I'm realizing that the older I get, the more disconnected I am from people, and what human connection now means to me is like having people that truly want it. Like you were saying, Sam, it's like a reciprocated, like intentional relationship with the person that's right in front of you or next to you, or not even in physical proximity to you, but just an understanding, like an active listening, an active understanding. And so now I feel like I've almost, my tribe has kind of like changed. I don't have as many people around me at all. It's changed drastically, but I'm happier, and I feel like my connections are more meaningful because they're all so different. I have all these different people around me who can bring these new stories into my world and teach me new things, and it's like, I don't know, it is more fulfilling. It feels like puzzle pieces, like in this puzzle that is my life, all these different pieces that I never had are like coming in to create this beautiful masterpiece, essentially. So it just feels a lot, human connection is now just the intention behind it, and also being open to new ideas, people who are not like me coming into my life, rather than looking for like-minded individuals.
The reciprocated relationship, like, do you know where I'm getting at?
Yeah, we put it in the context of like our marriage, right? And I think there are really strong parallels for romantic relationships and friendships that people don't necessarily, whether it's a desire to make those parallels or an understanding that like it's work to have friendships just as it is work to have a loving partner. But if we didn't have reciprocity, and I was the only one ever to hit you up, to want to hang out, to come over and kiss you or hug you, you would feel, I would feel like you were neglecting me, right? And that's how we feel in friendships. Eventually you wake up one day and you're like, if I didn't reach out, what would our friendship be?
Yeah. I'm curious to know what both of you think about that. But we were just saying, like, every relationship we can think about, there sort of is that pattern, or like maybe like almost like a hierarchy, or like there's like the one friend that maybe you can just tell is reaching out, or maybe it's yourself that just reaches out all the time, or maybe it's the other person that reaches out. And we're just talking about the reciprocity. Like there is like a balance to be had in those friendships. And I was just wondering if that's kind of what you're getting at. Like I used to have a lot of friends, but now I'm like focusing on the ones that there is that balance of like, it seems like they do want to actively be in my life.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. It's that in addition to, like, I've always grown up with just like-minded people around me, and I've not branched out to even maybe the uncomfortable zone of, like, meeting people who are in a completely different, I don't know, like, part of life than me, you know, having older friends or younger friends or some people who don't even live in the same city, but we've met online, like, but they do something completely different. Like, maybe they're, I don't know, an engineer or a nurse or something, and that's so different from me in a creative field where we can learn from each other. Like, I just made a friend recently that's become a really good friend who's a dental hygienist, and we have so many different, like, our whole lives are so different. The way they never really aligned, except we got really close and we found out we might be related because we come from the same part of northern New Mexico. So we don't know for sure, but pretty much everybody who grows up in that part of New Mexico is related in some way.
Wow.
But we didn't have anything aligned in growing up. She was in a sorority. I was not in a sorority. Like, she went on down this, like, medical field path. I was on the creative path. We didn't even go to school at the same time. And we just saw something in each other that was like, hey, I can learn from you, you can learn from me. So but there was a lot that we could give to each other, that reciprocity that you're talking about. But it's different than, you know, maybe somebody who I grew up with or went to college with in film school, and we were always doing the same thing together to where we always knew what each other were doing, if that makes sense. That's so, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I could say definitely changed. Connection for me has changed over time, the meaning and what it looks like. I know proximity is a big theme with that. Like, as we're younger, in elementary through high school, I don't think I ever looked at my friendships and said, do we get along? Like, do I, not to sound mean, like this person? And do they like me? Like, are we just clicking together? Or is it just because, you know, we met in middle school and we had classes together and now we've stayed friends? And it's probably common for a lot of people. They realize that. And I've kept some friends from high school, but I think at the end of high school is the first time I started thinking about, you know, do my connections, are they really connections, or are they just, you know, easy? Are they just people I'm around? And to your point, Elliot, about being intentional and, how do I word that? Making equal efforts, and how that looks as time goes on, and what that looks like in a friendship and relationship and whatnot. I actually used to be opposite of you, I think, Sam, where I was very overly intentional with my friendships. Like, I feel like I took a lot of pride, and I think part of my self-worth was making friends. So I would pour myself into all my friendships, and so much so that it was like, is it reciprocated? I didn't even let myself have the option to see if it wasn't reciprocated, because I was scared that it wouldn't be. So not to say these friends that I had weren't reciprocating in any way, or cared about me, but I tended to be the one to always reach out to people, to initiate, to make the plans, to have the parties. I loved connecting my friends to one another, so it'd always be like a group thing. And COVID actually was the first time where because we physically couldn't see our friends, took a step back and was like, if I stop asking people to hang out or how they're doing, will they reach out to me? And that was really hard for me to experiment with before, because I didn't want to know the answer. I didn't want to know that a lot of my friends probably wouldn't reach out to me anymore or check up on me or make plans. And it turned out that not a lot of my friends, but a few of them didn't reach out to me, didn't ask how I was doing. It wasn't that reciprocated connection that I was trying to give so much of. And now I feel like I went to the opposite end. I used to be super overly intentional. Now I'm on the opposite end, where I'm letting those things happen so naturally and come to me. And I'm trying to find the balance, because I don't want to only connect with people who make it like easy, where they're the ones now asking me to hang out. They're the ones making more of the efforts, and I'm just going with it. I guess I just got a little damaged in the past by noticing that it wasn't reciprocated, and I still struggle with that. So I let it happen to me rather than, you know, like finding that balance and making it more of a mutual thing. But that was a long way to say that's how it's changed for me. And that was an example of like, oh wait, these people aren't asking me to hang out anymore.
Yeah.
I think we're starting to like segue into this conversation about proximity, which is there's this whole period, especially in American culture. Obviously, I can't speak for other countries, but where you're talking about elementary school, middle school, high school, you're just in the same place all the time with the same people. So of course you make friendships with them. And then even sometimes as you graduate and you go to work, you become friends with your coworkers. But the older we get and the less we're in situations where proximity is the driving factor for a relationship, like we keep hearing, adult friend dating is so hard. I think that it's this element of proximity. So if that's not the driving force, how do we make and maintain friendships? What does that look like? Do you have tips? Or are you like, this shit's so hard?
Well, I think you two put yourself in a good position to naturally meet people. Like you've sort of done that with the endeavors that you've, you know, taken on. And, you know, the question that I have is, you know, how has human connection played a role? Do you think for both of you, maybe like human connection, besides making money, of course, making a living, human connection is the underlying reason for going into photography, going into wellness, going into the coffee culture and making this magazine? Would both of you say maybe that the human connection aspect is like a really strong element and the reason why you chose to do the things that you're doing?
Yeah, definitely for me, yeah. I never wanted, my dad had like an office job growing up, which kept him without a lot of friends. I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but I think more of our generation just isn't as interested in office jobs for that reason. It doesn't really facilitate connection depending on the job. And now that we see all these opportunities online and how other jobs we could have, I never wanted that type of job. The coffee shop world to me has always been about connection, and those large ones where you meet people, like I met you two at a coffee shop at Satellite.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that's the origin of our friendship. That's so cute.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of super cool different people at coffee shops. Like, it's kind of like the watering hole for a lot of creatives. So, I've always thrived off of that connection aspect of the coffee world, and the magazine too, the same thing. Like, I think I have a lot of humble, cool friends. So I wanted to do that that sounded so, I have cool friends. But there's a lot of humble, creative people in my life that I want to show off through the magazine. And whether it goes to 20 people or 100 or whatever happens with it, I don't really care as long as it made some kind of connection. Even just between 5 people, that's cool with me. Yeah. So yes, I think for me, that aspect of connection is the driving force for me, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Kay?
I agree. I'm in the same boat with photography, in that I started doing it because, I think initially I started doing it because it was like something that I was passionate about, but then I realized the passion kind of lied within meeting new people and being able to like really capture the essence of people and then to have lifelong connections with them too, which is why I think now I'm taking a break, because I realized that was always my intention, is like I would connect with these people, ask them to model for me. It became no more that people were like reaching out to me for photos for their family. It was more like I saw somebody in the community that was like, let's shoot together because it's super fun. And like Elliot and I even had those conversations. That's how we started, our thread of conversation started happening, you know? And that's what I realized I liked most about it, was like meeting new people, getting to bounce ideas off of each other, getting to showcase how our vision was different or alike. And it was just really cool. So that was the connection there, or why I went that direction with connection there. And then in the wellness world, I think it's like all about connection for me. Like that I went this direction because I started The Glow, which was this little gathering that is on pause right now, but it's a free gathering for the community to come together and discuss, you know, basic human connection topics like, you know, what makes you who you are, what's what do you do in your life? Do you want to connect with new people? Why is it hard for you to connect with people, kind of similarly to what you're asking on this podcast, but just in a really free-flowing area where people can come and go as they please, and talk about it. And that's kind of what made me want to dive into the world of like nutritional therapy and meditation and yoga, because we all come together. And even in nutritional therapy, you reconnect with yourself, and like the human connection of self plays a huge role in it. And connecting with your body is also a huge thing that helps us connect with other people. If we're disconnected from ourselves, we can't fully connect with others. So I think that's a huge thing for me. But also I want to say with the coffee shop thing really fast, coffee shops are the biggest like hub of connection, because that's where Nate and I met. And that's how, we wouldn't have met if it weren't for me working at a coffee shop. So coffee shops are like, it's where it's at.
What coffee shop did you work at?
Rust is Gold.
Oh, sick. Okay, nice.
Little
Very
plug.
Cool. I didn't know that you guys met there. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah,
That's so adorable.
That's amazing.
I wasn't working actually. I got off of work and I started editing a wedding gallery there. And I was like, I'm just going to stay here a little longer. It was like closing up. And then Nate came in and he started working. And we were just staring at each other. And we both were like, do we know each other? He's like, I don't know how I know you. And I was like, I don't know how I know you. And we still haven't figured it out. But
Maybe you were just
Interesting.
this cute barista that he was like,
he'd
this
never
face.
come in there.
Just
before.
cosmically aligned, dude.
It was the first time he went in.
You know? Dang.
Maybe
I know.
the interwebs.
Yeah.
I think it.
Well, I don't know. He wasn't on Instagram or anything really. So it was weird.
I choose to believe in the cosmic alignment.
The
Like,
serendipity.
The face
Yeah.
of his
The
dreams, you mean?
serendipity.
yeah, it's just like even if it sounds corny, it's just like I feel like I've known you all my life. You know that feeling? I'm
Yeah.
like that's funny because I feel like that's how you and I are, because when Sam and I met, okay, we don't remember how we met. We just know that we probably met through UNM, through the dance field in some way, and like we had each other's number, and we were friends on Facebook. We didn't really talk. We just knew each other,
What?
and then all of a sudden, like we're hanging out, and then we're I'm filming a video for Sam's dance project, and we fall in love. But we like don't remember how we met, which is but I was like, I feel like I've known you for so long, but how did I meet you? So weird. Mm-hmm.
That's
Very
so
interesting.
Adorable. It's
Yeah.
too much.
That's how it went down, man. It's pretty
so
cool.
cute.
I will say, just to add on to we're talking about intention and like serendipity. Maybe the serendipity doesn't really have much to do with it, but I'm just talking about like this. It seems like there's this human connection, this theme that keeps popping up in our lives over and over. And when I was at Zenda with you talking, and you brought up the idea of the glow, I'm just trying to toot your horn, but you brought up the idea of the glow, and I was telling you like I'm really desperate for connection. Like I wish that I had like this place, like this hub where I could like invite people, or at least have all my friends in one place that we could like be vulnerable and just have a conversation. Mm-hmm. Like that doesn't really happen a lot. Or, I mean, maybe it does when you go out to the park or wherever you go to a bar and have drinks. Like you're there to connect, I guess. But like this specific meeting place, it's a safe place to connect, to share ideas, and then like a month or two later, you did it. You were doing it, and I was like, oh my god, like that's so beautiful, and that's cool. It's really cool. Yeah. So.
And something that you spoke into existence when you went to a glow meetup happened.
Yeah, and then I don't know but we were talking about meditation, and we were like,
you can't see it in the camera, everybody, but Elliot's eyes are tearing up.
know,
Okay.
it's got tears.
There's your serendipity for you.
I know, dude, it's crazy.
You slightly
love it.
derailed us. I was asking
Sorry.
about like proximity.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean for you? How do you, if that's not the driving factor of your relationship, what is the driving factor? What are these other elements that create and maintain relationships?
Well, I will say personally, for me, when I make a strong connection, I want to hold on to it for as long as possible, and have a really hard time letting it fade away if that's the way it's supposed to go. And sometimes proximity has a lot to play in that. And specifically, I studied abroad for like 2 separate times for a couple months at a time. And I made a lot of friends, and specifically like 3 really close friends while I was studying abroad with my best friend from Albuquerque. We both made these strong friendships. And when I came back to Albuquerque, I kept those connections alive by writing letters. That's like one of my favorite I don't know if it's underrated, but old school, I guess, for sure, way of connecting with people. And of course we could just like text or call one another, but I think the intentionality and the time that it takes to write something down, even if it doesn't look like a beautiful scrapbook with some writing on it from me. Maybe it's just on lined paper. There's a lot of love in that. And in obvious ways of the time it took and your own handwriting and that you bought a stamp and took the time to mail it off. But I kept up with that a lot in the beginning when I came back from study abroad. It's definitely faded now because I think the longer you're away from somebody, the harder it is to keep that fire alive. And I haven't seen a lot of those people since I was abroad 4 or 5 years ago. So that is something I try to do, and there's still like a couple people that I send letters to, and that proximity is very far, like thousands of miles. But in terms of like, you know, maybe your friend moved across the city and you aren't in school together anymore. For me, it's always just being consistent, and that could mean you text them once a week or once a month, and you maybe only see them 2 times in a month or less. Like, that's fine with me now, depending on the closeness of that connection. But like, if I think somebody forgot about me and I get a text that says, hey, I saw this t-shirt in the store and I reminded me of you because you like said band that's on the t-shirt, I'm right back where I was. I feel connected to them. I feel thought of. I feel like I could see them tomorrow and it would go back to normal. So I try to do that too. Like, if that would make me feel connected to somebody I haven't seen, then I'll be the one to send, thinking of you when I saw this. A letter if I have more time. Or, you know, I'll hang out with a group of my friends once in a while because maybe that's all we have time for. So I get to see all of them at once. I don't know if that answered it well,
Yeah,
but
I think like the theme I'm pulling away from that is thoughtfulness.
yeah.
Which is like a sister for me to intention, right? Like, you can be intentional and also not be thoughtful. And I don't know if you can be thoughtful without intention, but it's this piece of like, I was thinking of you specifically, and like my relationship to you is what made me think of this.
Yeah.
That just kind of like re-sparks the fire of the friendship.
And there's like a weird line for me where I don't know how I feel about this, but there's some friends and there's some friendships where they would send me a text that they're also friends with my sister, and she'd get the exact same text. And it was a sweet, thoughtful text. Hi, how are you doing? How's your family? But it was copy and pasted. And I don't know, there is a bit of thoughtfulness in there, and obviously there's some intention, but it wasn't like personalized intention. So it felt very like, oh, hey, how you doing? Like, to make sure that they still know that you know they're still around. Which I guess is better than nothing. It's better than being ghosted, but that doesn't always feel so great either, because you're like, okay, you sent it to me and my sister, you probably sent it to all your other friends. What makes my connection with you any stronger or more real right now?
I totally like understand that like similar feeling where it's like you might think of somebody that's like more distant in proximity and you want to reach out, because I've done that with a few of my friends that I've kind of like lost touch with maybe over time. But even with my friends who are in physical proximity, I've noticed that the hardest thing like over time has been how busy we all get. I think that even when you're really close, even with Nate my husband, like in this house too, I've realized that there are some times when it just doesn't align, you know, even though there's physical proximity. I'm like, we're both, especially me, I feel like I'm the one who's always kind of drawn the other way because I have so much on my mind and I have so much I'm trying to accomplish in one direction. And, you know, one of us is kind of there presently, but it's kind of the connection is still a little lost because my brain is like somewhere else. So the proximity, like the intangible is like out of reach, you know? And it's the same with my friends too. I have so many friends in the city. I have friends out of the city, but the friends that are in the city, it's like how we can't always get our schedules to align to where we can meet for coffee and catch up. And so we have a phone call, but even on the phone call, we're doing something else. I can tell. I have a friend who calls me pretty much every day, but we're both like making breakfast or we're trying to feed the dogs or we're doing something. And it's like I'm like, what did you say? And she's like, I don't remember. But on that same thread, I still feel close to her because we at least are on the other line with each other and we don't have to be talking about something so meaningful because I'm like, I know you're there on the other line. And I know, even though maybe you didn't hear what I said, maybe I didn't hear what you said because I'm focusing on burning my eggs, like, we still are here for each other, and we made the conscious decision to still answer each other's call. There's other people who I haven't had a call with in a really long time. You know, even my sister. I don't think I've talked or seen my sister for a month and a half, probably. Like, truly. Like, I saw her at a dinner, but it, like, didn't feel like or a lunch for 4th of July, but I feel like we didn't really, like, talk, you know? So I think it's all dependent, back to what Mel was saying, on, like, the thoughtfulness and what you're saying about intention, Sam. Like, you have to kind of think about if it's like really something that's important to you, and try to make the effort, but also understand, like, that life gets busy and that we're all our own individual people, and we have to do our lives, but the intention and the connection and the reciprocity is, like, what really drives the force, even if there is physical or non-physical proximity.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's, like, sparking for me, turning the question back on myself. Before we moved out of Albuquerque, 99% of my close friends had already moved away. So there are some of those friends that I'm still very close with, and there are some that the relationship has really fizzled out. And I think in the ways that it has worked is a mutual understanding that we're super busy, and if you call me and I don't answer, it's because I'm busy, and the other person totally understands and takes no offense to it. But if we're both in the car on our way somewhere and a call comes in, like, we're going to answer, shoot the shit, and then say, gotta go, talk to you later. And I think that kind of dual understanding and also the intention to reach out combined has really made that friendship continue to blossom, even though we're states and states apart.
I think understanding, too, that it's all the ebb and flow. There are friends that I've definitely not seen for 6 months at a time, especially when we were in college and working and all that. And then there are periods of time when I see them like 2 times a week. And that happens for a couple months, and then it's back again where I don't see them for months at a time. And seeing that usually the pendulum swings back in some way, and if not, like, accepting and understanding that that's where it is and not taking it personally is helpful in, you know, keeping them alive and blossoming, or at least keeping that possibility there, rather than, oh, they stopped reaching out to me, I'm not friends with them anymore. But, like, ebb and flow, it'll come back if it's supposed to.
For sure.
And you might see them more often eventually.
For sure. Talking about earlier when you said that you had this experiment where you didn't reach out to people to see if they would reach out to you, and then before that we talked about, like, the balance and the just sort of the pattern that the friendships get in. Do you think some of those people that didn't reach out to you, it was just because of that pattern that was possibly established, that you were the one that to always reach out to them, so they just expected that? Or do you feel at a certain point, 2 months have gone by, they haven't hit me up, that must mean I don't really mean that much? I'm just curious. I kind of wanted you to expand on that. I don't know if you think I'm getting a little bit off topic. Is that okay with you?
No, I was about to guide us down, like, the opposite rabbit hole, where when you say the words human connection, you think of, like, the warm and the fuzzy and the love and the friendship. There's also this whole other piece of human connection, which is, like, sometimes it hurts and sometimes you get burned, and you started touching on, like, the reason I've swung to the other end of the pendulum is these moments where I got burned. So you're reading my mind. Boom.
Sweet. Yeah, what do you think about that?
I'll try to connect both and see if I can. When it first happened, or when I first decided, let me see who reaches out, I definitely took it more the sad personal route. Like, it's been 2 months, they didn't reach out to me, I must not have been as important to them as I thought. In the back of my mind, though, and I try to be really fair about everything, and
Libra.
I was about to say, I'm wearing the necklace.
That's funny.
I try to understand both sides, so that, I don't know, I think it's a protective mechanism. Like, if this person were to come to me and say, well, you never reached out to me, I want to have both perspectives in mind. Like, what were they maybe feeling? What was I feeling? So that I'm prepared for this conflict. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I do that in a lot of aspects of my life, but in this one, I also had in mind, like, well, I have created this pattern of being the one to plan and reach out. And I also understand that I like to plan and I like to initiate most of the time. And that was really hard for me because I didn't know the balance at that point of, is stopping cold turkey actually unfair to these people too? Because they're used to me asking them to hang out. So maybe they think I don't like them anymore. I don't want to hang out with them anymore. Exactly. I haven't asked anybody. I'm chill with everybody that's happened with. I even probably have seen most of them since. I had that like realization of I'm not going to ask all the time. But I never asked, how did that make you feel? I never really thought to do something like that. But I try now to be much more intentional about when I'm overwhelmed with being the one who asks or plans or whatever, and asking. I mean, being in a relationship taught me that a lot. Like, I can't just expect my boyfriend to know when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I want him to plan the date. So I have to ask him, and I hate that I have to ask because I think I'm so intuitive that I'll just know what he needs, but why do I have to tell him? Which, of course, is unfair. But now I try to be more intentional about, like, the tennis ball back and forth. If they've asked me last time, I'll ask this time. If they planned lunch last time, I'll plan for dinner next time. And telling them why I back away if I do. Yeah. In the beginning, I definitely took it a lot more personally and didn't communicate as well why or what I was doing.
Yeah. I think when you started saying it, I was actually thinking it, which was like, well, they get used to you reaching out. So then they're going to think, I must not mean very much to them. And then, but you're thinking the same thing about them at the same time, which is pretty interesting. For either a question for both of you, but do you think that I don't really know much about any other countries? I haven't studied abroad. We've been to Italy once for 7 days. So I don't know much about other cultures, but America just seems pretty fucked up right now in general. I mean, maybe the world, but America especially. Do you think it's like an emotionally developmental issue, or like a larger societal problem that like it seems like we keep to ourselves more often, or it's so common to like meet people who just seem like the people that are not going to reach out, like they're okay with just like it fading away. And yeah, have you both had a lot of instances of that? Have you thought about that?
I've experienced similar things to you, Mel, where it's like I've felt bad when it wasn't like fully reciprocated in the same way, where I'm reaching out all the time to the same person. But kind of going to what you're saying, Elliot, like in other countries, I've only been out of the country twice. So but I do think something that I realized about just general connection in other places compared to here is that we, especially I'd say New Mexico. I just want to like throw New Mexico into this mix because I don't know much about like other cities or states. It feels like it's a very New Mexican thing to be kind of reclusive. And like when we do go out and meet other people or we meet with our friends or whatever, it's like we have kind of our routine with it because we're just a small place and everybody knows everybody and we all know the same places to go. But it feels like we're kind of like, oh, we'll do it tomorrow, or, oh, I wanted to meet up with this person, but let's cancel because I'm just feeling tired today, or like the heat's got me in, like it feels kind of like a New Mexican thing a little bit to be in. Whereas like when Nate and I went out of the country recently and we went to Austria, we went out at like 3:00. And like everybody was just out, like hanging out at the park, and they were like just doing like whatever, just chilling and hanging out, and like there weren't even a lot of people on their phones, really. It was just like people were just hanging, talking. They had little picnics out, and they're just hanging out. And people are just walking around. They're out of work early, too, often, or they're on a break. So they're getting to connect with people or connect with their families again. And it feels like here, it's like we go, go, go. If you have an office or a 9-to-5 type job, you just go through it. And then at the end of the day, you're like, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm done, And so with your friends or your family, you're just not connecting in the same way. And so to initiate, going back to this whole thing of like, hey, let's initiate hanging out, or vice versa, like between each person, it just gets hard because it's like it doesn't just naturally happen. We have to like be really intentional about it every time. We're like, hey, I'm actually feeling good today. Let's hang out. And then like if somebody doesn't ask you to hang out, you kind of feel bad. But it's like because we're all in the same boat a little bit. We're like all experiencing the same thing. I don't
Right.
know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I'm seeing it when I like with the out of country versus America type thing.
You said Austria, and I pointed at myself because I studied abroad in Austria.
Nice.
So
Okay.
I was like, oh,
Cool.
cool. Where'd you go?
I went to Vienna.
Yeah, that's where I was.
Dude,
I love
look at-
Vienna.
Look at
I
that
love
connection. That's so
Vienna.
sick.
It
That's
was
sick.
so awesome. I want to
cool.
live there.
No, gosh.
And we're going
Put
to
me down
Vienna
the
in
rabbit
6
hole.
weeks.
It's amazing.
Aren't you glad I told you we should go to Austria?
Are you guys
Yeah,
going
I
to
didn't want to go.
Austria?
We're going
No.
to Vienna.
Oh, you are?
We are going to Vienna in
We're only
September.
going to spend a few days, but
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It is.
It's so underrated. Nobody really talks about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't choose to go there, but the program that I was in went there, and I didn't even know. I didn't think it was Australia. That's a big joke. Everybody in Austria says, like, oh, yeah, it's not Australia. Mm-hmm. So I didn't think it was Australia, but I didn't know where it was.
Mm-hmm.
So
I didn't know either.
but it's amazing. You'll love it.
Tell us about like what you think about maybe the difference.
I have a few theories that I go over and over again with my best friend Ariana. I went with her both times that I studied abroad, so we talk about it a lot. And also my sister Jen studied abroad in Madrid, so that's a different country, but we still have like similar ideas on probably what I'm about to say. So a few reasons that I have in mind are like America is very individualistic, and that came in through COVID. Again, I can't speak for like bigger cities like New York and stuff like that, which I feel like it probably was a little bit more connected there because it's a big city. You have to be, you're kind of forced to. But here, especially in New Mexico or like Texas, these huge states, you aren't forced to be around people that much. Like I could go to the store and go home and see the cashier and obviously random faces in the store, but nobody else that day. But we get a fake sense of connection through social media, which I struggle with a lot. Like you can sit home and scroll through TikTok for hours at a time and feel some sense of connection, but it's not the kind of connection we need. And I noticed when I was studying abroad that people weren't really on their phones as much. I'm sure the younger generations are still like they are here, where they're more attached to their phones. So they grew up with it more, but at least when I was there, my generation wasn't really on their phones. There's a lot more spontaneity, I would say, because you're already out in the city, most places, unless it's a rural place. So if you're already out at the coffee shop and you see a friend and he wants you to go to dinner with him and then go to a bar, you're like, well, it's going to take me 40 minutes to take the transit home, so yeah, why not? And here, I can get in my car and be alone and drive for 15 minutes to get back to my house. And sometimes, especially when anxiety kicks in, that's the better choice in my mind.
Yeah.
So it keeps me from doing it as easily as I did in Europe. But there's a lot more connectedness in Europe, I think. They take a lot more responsibility for not just themselves, but their apartment, the flowers outside their apartment, their parents, their city in general. Here we don't really have that. It's like, this is my house.
Yeah.
I take care of my house. I don't care about your house. I think that, yeah.
I think that's, I mean, there's a lot going on here. You said we're talking about proximity, about a bigger city in Vienna. And then I'm thinking about us living in Denver now and how it is so easy here. Like I was telling her, we drove 60 miles already and before 3:00. We drive like 10 miles a week together in Denver. We live in an apartment. We've never done that before. We've met a bunch of people because we're in an apartment. We're seeing these people all the time. You know,
We walk a lot.
we walk so much. And the spontaneity thing is funny that you brought that up. Is like, so we were at a bar that the first time going down the street, this girl's waiting outside. She's really sweet and just talks to us. And now she's one of our good friends. And she, you know, her husband comes, we introduce ourselves, and then their friends come and introduce themselves. And then they are like, well, what are you guys doing tonight? Like, we're, you know, after this, we're going to the comedy club. Do you want to go? And I'm like, what?
We're like, yeah, we
I'm like,
wanna
this
go.
this never happens. And I'm like, is that because it's a bigger city? Like people are already out. The spontaneity aspect. It's like, well, we don't really have to get in the car and go far. Like we could theoretically walk to the comedy club literally from our house. We walk to the like I said, we walk to the bar. We could walk to the comedy club. And so I'm really thinking that this, in a place like Albuquerque, the intention has to really be there, right? Because like you're saying, like you can drive all these places and meet no one. Like I drove so many places today and met, the cashier, and then we're home, and there it's like you run into people when you're walking all the time. And so there's something to be said for that proximity. It's been easy and effortless, I feel like, for us to make friends. And I really do think a big part of that is that we walk everywhere, that we don't get in the car and drive everywhere we go and see almost no one. Like we're kind of forced to see a lot of people. And I think that's been like a big blessing for you and I, whereas here we lived in a house and you're just fucking driving everywhere all the time,
I think what you're getting at is twofold for me, where it's like this element of spontaneity, but the root of it is also one, transit, right? Like in Europe, it's much easier. Most people don't even need a car. The public transportation is great. And this other piece, which is America is a capitalistic society, right? So we're raising people to be excited to work and grind and hustle and applauding people for doing those things and having those attributes. Where in Europe, they're like, make friends, go have a life. You are a human first.
In Europe, I feel like they value pleasure and humanity at the top, not money and material things and consumerism and stuff like that. And that's not to say, obviously, there's people in America who value those things, and it's like right here. But that was like the norm, was like to go and enjoy a beer every other night with people at the bar, or you would go to a restaurant and see an old 60-plus-year-old waiter or server, and they probably could live off of that serving money. And so that's what they chose to do for their lives. They didn't have this bigger, I'm serving for now so that I can pay the bills for my schooling to be a doctor or whatever. It was, this is what I'm doing with my life. I'm going to serve, and I'm going to live my life outside of work.
Yeah.
And that facilitates to me a lot more work-life balance, like pleasure mattering and meeting people being more important than the material stuff that is more common to be valued here.
You reminded me of the train of thought I lost. Okay, so like one piece is this like American grind culture, right? And then something has to be devalued in order for that to be at the top. And when you were telling Elliot your response to, like, I try and think of the other person's perspective when I think about this experiment of I'm not going to reach out and see what happens. I was like, wow, that's so emotionally intelligent of you. And emotional intelligence is just not something that we put a premium on and teach people. And that's why people really, really, really need therapy, is because we're adults trying to go about the world lacking emotional intelligence. And that piece of communication and openness and vulnerability, when it lacks from a friendship, if nobody wants to address it, then it's like, well, I guess I would rather never see you again than tell you that I feel sad or that you hurt me or that this is why I did this thing. And that's crazy.
Yeah, I really feel strongly about that, because I think in a lot of my connections with friends, family, everything, like I feel like it's a lot of the issues, like the disconnection of being able, or just the inability to communicate or have that emotional intelligence to be able to communicate feelings, or which in turn sometimes I find myself finding it hard, because I'm like, wow, I'm surrounding myself so much with people where it's like we can't explain why we're disconnected right now or why we're so unhappy with each other, and so we just choose to not communicate, and that's when that disconnection happens. And I've actually had quite a few friends where it's like they've had trouble communicating to me what it is that's not working for us, and I've tried pulling too hard, but it's just not, we didn't learn in the same way how to communicate. And so I'm not thinking about how that might feel overbearing to them, that I'm trying to pull from them and they're not able to give me, a reason. So we just fall out of friendship or out of communication, because they're like, you're pulling too much from me right now. And I'm like, you're not giving me anything. And I'm not looking at what they're experiencing. And it's been so hard for me, because I've lost quite a few connections that way, just because we have a very different need of communication. And I can see it when I would spend time with their families. Like a particular person I'm thinking of, who was a really good friend of mine, their family just like didn't ever communicate. We'd sit at the table and there was no communication during the whole dinner. And it was like, if you had a hard moment, don't have it.
Yeah.
Don't have the hard moment. Don't cry. Don't feel anything. Push it away and go back within yourself. And for me, my family is feelers. Like, they were like, which is almost too much sometimes, where it was like, feel everything, explain everything, tell me how you're feeling, and I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling, almost to where it was overbearing and anxiety inducing. But that's how I felt. I was like, tell me what's going on. Like, and there was just, the disconnection would happen. And I feel like that's a problem as a general whole in this country, is that we neglect our own, like, feelings and our emotional well-being, to where we feel like either we can't express or we have to express too much. And it's because, like you said, Sam, we're putting something down lower on the priority. And I think it's our mental health, our emotional health. Like, just being able to express ourselves can be really challenging, and that in turn creates disconnection.
Yeah, this is like another piece where I feel like friendship, the parallels of friendship and love come really close. Is like, I know that to be a really good wife, I have to work on myself so that I can be committed to bringing my best self to the table. But there's no reason why that commitment can't translate to friendships, right? Like, if I'm not working on myself and understanding my own emotions and my emotional health and my emotional intelligence, how can I communicate with my friend or my partner? Like, that parallel for me rides so close.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a major problem for men, like, big time. Like, I can only think of, and, you know, just have to be honest, I can only think of one friend at the moment, a male friend that we can have emotional conversations a lot of the time. And that's not a slight on anybody else, but it's just, I'm always like trying to get at the heart of the matter, like, why, like, keep going deeper, like, why, and a lot of it seems to stem from, like, most problems stem from the family, right? Most problems stem from childhood, from youth, and I'm trying to think right now, figure out, like, is it because you were saying that we applaud the grind, and I think maybe we applaud it, but it's like, we need it, like, we need this money to survive because it's so expensive to live. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, why, how, if it starts at the family, like, how do we reverse it? Like, how do four people, you know, do something? Like, what do we do? Like, for men, like, it's like, I can't convince anybody to go to therapy. Like, it's easy to say to go to therapy. It's probably saved my life. I think it saved our marriage. I'm just thinking aloud, but I'm like, I have all the male friends I've ever had. Like, only a few. Do I even know? Do I even, like, really know? And I know that it's not, like, their fault at the end of the day. You know, it's like, I mean, at some point you have to take responsibility. Hopefully you can recognize it and try and get there. But it's just such a problem with males. It's like such a problem to connect. And hopefully with this podcast, we've had 4 ladies on so far, but it'd be nice to talk to some dudes about this. It's such a problem. It's like a major issue. I even realized when you were like, I know, you know, the camera's kind of far away if you couldn't tell, audience, but Elliot has a little tear, and I was like, okay.
So I didn't say that. Like,
I'm like, what the fuck was that, dude? What?
It's amazing that you're feeling so deeply, but it's like, I don't think we applaud that enough for people in general, males, even females too, to, like, embrace vulnerability.
Yeah.
Like, vulnerability is human connection. Like, going back to when you guys first asked us, like, what human connection is, I feel like I forgot that my big thing is that I feel like it's being vulnerable. Because if I can be my true self, I truly feel like I'm connecting with everybody else. When I'm guarded, I don't feel connected. So
Totally.
You experiencing that, and you saying this about males not being able to, like, express themselves or, like, feel vulnerable, that's why the disconnection is happening, because it's been conditioned generational trauma, you know, or, you know.
For sure.
I find it really interesting that, like you were saying, emotional intelligence is a big thing that a lot of people, did you say they don't have it? I don't want to put words.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, and it's not like a dig at anybody. I think sometimes, like what Kay was saying about pulling things from people and then them feeling overwhelmed and feeling like, I can't, like, you're expecting too much from me, like maybe too much vulnerability. Maybe, like, it was hard for me to realize that I'm a puller too. Like, I'm going to give you all my deepest bits because I'm seeking that deep level connection. And if I don't receive it, it's really hard for me to feel close to somebody. And surface level friendships are really hard for me. Like, just a friendship where we go out and eat and talk about our work days and our family and like all these really beautiful things. That's fine. But I need to talk about the fact that I've been really anxious recently for XYZ. I need to talk about, I think my mom made me feel this way when I was younger and now I'm like this. That was just an example. But some people don't go that deep. And I wonder if that's how it is for a lot of men. They weren't trained, maybe isn't the right word to use, but they didn't practice going that deep within themselves to even be able to answer a question like, how is your soul? Do you feel connected to yourself?
Right.
How was your relationship with your dad when you were younger? They've never thought about it.
Right.
And when those emotions come up, they're like, no, push it away.
Right.
Don't think about where it came from, move on.
Yeah.
And that's not just men, it's men and women. They just don't, sometimes people don't get that deep with themselves. And having somebody ask them when they're not ready can push them away. And I've done that too, so I relate to you on that. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you fix that by, as parents, when you have children, you practice talking about these things. But at our adult ages now, I don't know how you could facilitate that with other males or
Right.
people who struggle with that emotional intelligence.
I mean, I think you're doing it. The question that you're asking to me is like, how do we affect change on a large scale? But my favorite thing is lead by example. And if it lands in the moment, awesome. And sometimes like the seed is planted and it doesn't land in the moment and you push people away. And then months down the line, it clicks like, oh, they were trying to connect with me by being vulnerable and I got scared. Maybe I should practice being vulnerable.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of like simplifying the problem to like, simplify the solution. And I'm thinking of like, the only thing I can think of is my own experience. And then it comes down to intentionality again, because like my dad was born in the 50s and his dad was in, the war. And so like, and it was always a thing back then. Like it was, if you, well, at least for him, like the tough love is like, you don't want your son to be gay or something. So like, I'm going to give my son tough love. So like my dad can only recount like one time in his life where his dad told him he loved him, like in his childhood. I'm like, if that was me, I might not be here, or I would be a very different person. And for some reason, like my dad was obviously very traumatized and very damaged, but I don't know what it is. It is his religion. Is it like his intentionality that he was going to decide that I'm going to have a boy and I'm going to be the different way. And I guess I don't know what the other answer is. I mean, my dad still, has, anger issues and still has trauma from his childhood, but he chose to just flip the script. And, I don't know. That's just like the simple answer is like, I think it all comes back down to intention. Cause he could have just been the same way, but I think you're right. I think it just starts with leading by example.
Yeah, I mean,
at least in
he made the
case.
intention and the resolve to tell you often that he loves you. And then now you as a human going about the world, tell everybody how much you love them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you do it really well. I don't know if you need more reassurance in that way, but like as an outsider, and I know Sam has great reassurance for you too of being your wife, but I don't, like I said, I find it really hard to connect with people on that small talk level. So the fact that you're still in my life and you're in my life speaks a lot for how emotionally intelligent and vulnerable you are. Because not that I wouldn't be around you, but we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation if you weren't already at that level of vulnerability. But I understand the longing for it with other males and being like, where is it?
Right.
And having a hard time finding it. Because I definitely have a couple, my boyfriend Eric has similar experiences of difficult time connecting with men on an emotional level. And I'm not trying to plug my magazine, I promise. But I asked,
No, we
No,
want
plug
you to
it,
plug
plug
it.
I asked someone, a male in there, about if he's felt like it's easier growing up to connect to men or women, and he said always women. And because his mom always gave him the nurturing, listening, emotional aspect of his childhood. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but it is a trend that I see with anybody, but of course a little more with men. So I can see why that's a struggle to notice that.
Right.
I feel like this could be a can opener for the worms of self-doubt that we were thinking about. Circling back to earlier, there's a phenomena that I see, which is, okay, we're not teaching men anything about emotional intelligence. And then when they're like 30, everyone's like, well, what the fuck? Why aren't you emotionally intelligent? You're so stunted and I can't get anything out of you. And so then men are feeling a little insecure because they're lacking in this capacity, but we're not actually arming them with the tools. So that's seeding this self-doubt. And I'm curious, like, now we're doing this vicious cycle of, well, I'm feeling uncomfortable and I have this self-doubt about my capacity to be emotional and understanding, but I don't have the tools to fix it, and that makes me more self-conscious, and it just kind of feeds itself. I'm curious what you think about that, if you have perspective.
Dude, you got to get therapy. Like, really. Like, I think that's what it comes down to, seriously. Like, you need someone to mediate. You need someone who doesn't know you to literally just get it off your chest. And also, like, you need someone to, like, call you on your bullshit. Like, you really need that. And, like, it's hard to, I think that's why a lot of men actually don't go to therapy, because unfortunately, I think a lot don't want to confess or admit that, you know, they have all these failures, because it's hard to do. Maybe not, maybe it's a little bit of pride, but I think it's hard to do, and maybe scary and maybe traumatizing, but the answer is just to get therapy, dude. Like, seriously, like, everyone needs therapy, you know, and I think that is really, I tell like all my male friends that, like, you know, you're going to therapy, like, for that, or you're talking to somebody that's not your partner. Like, you can't dump all that stuff on someone. Like, you know, you should with your partner, but, like, they are not your therapist. They are not there to fix your problem. Like,
They can't arm you with the skills that you need.
no, that's just a recipe for disaster. So I think the simple answer is therapy. Obviously, now things start coming into play, like money. Like, do you have the health insurance for that? Do you have the money for that? I know those are issues, but I think that is the answer. And I think that is why, and I don't mean to be dramatic at all, but I think that is why I'm literally sitting here, because I went to therapy and I had someone to talk to and just to release and to, like, arm me with tools. Like, that's what they're there for. That they went to fucking school for that. They specialize in that. Like, hopefully most of them love to do that. I mean, you were kind of there just recently.
I was working at a counseling agency. It was
Okay.
specifically for children, but they also saw adults, and so I can speak to that. It's even for, gosh, yeah, that's like a huge thing, because it's really hard for dads to put even their sons in therapy, because they're like, I've had so many calls where they're like, oh, this was just court ordered, like, I have to do this, I know it's not going to work for him, he's, you know, he needs something else, or like, or young men, these teenagers who come in who need the help, and they're feeling like they're like, I don't know what this looks like for me, but I'm really nervous about it. I don't want to talk, but I'm going to come here anyway. And then they end up being long term with the therapist and finding that it's really helpful. So I think I would see it every day that I went into the office, just working with these families, that, like, it ended up helping people long term, but it's so hard to get them there because it feels so taboo.
Right.
For some reason, even
Yeah.
really for anybody to go to therapy, it's starting to become more normalized, but still, to walk into therapy, you almost feel like everybody, I don't know if you all, when you go to therapy, or if you've ever been to therapy, felt this way, but, like, if you walk in and somebody else is there, or, like, leaving, or there's somebody in the waiting room, you're kind of like, I don't have problems, I promise, or, like, my problems aren't that bad, or you're like, I have so many problems, I'm sorry, but, like, that's how I feel like every interaction in our waiting room would kind of go. It's almost like it was just like a strange experiment, you know, like, in seeing how people would interact, or kind of like everybody would sit so far away from each other when they'd sit in the waiting room, because I think they were, like, so within themselves to where they're like, don't look at me, like, I'm just here because I need to get through this, you know?
Right.
But yeah, so also to what you're saying about, like, therapies, I think that people and men just have to be open to modalities of healing like that, what's been instilled in them. And, like, if it's not, for some people, I've known a lot of people too where talk therapy didn't work for them, and, like, maybe art therapy worked for them, or, like, occupational therapy for other things, you know, like, where it was like maybe the issue wasn't in a mental sense, but it was in sort of like another sense, or they went to meditation and they learned how to breathe, or, you know, there's always something at the root, but it's like, it's making that step that's the hardest. And I think that's really what I saw being at the agency, was just the hardest part is doing it,
Yeah, for sure.
being able to get there.
Yeah. I'm thinking too, like, there's so many tools that we already have now at our disposal. Like, I'm just thinking of YouTube, and it's like, and it keeps coming back down to intention. Like, there's so many things that I fail to do in life, in my business, that I know I could do if there was more intention, right? Instead of being on my phone fucking around for 6 hours. Like, there are things that I could do to simplify my life and to solve things We just choose not to for whatever reason. Humans are complicated. But, you know, talking to men, like, just a simple YouTube search can, like, help change your life. Really, like, therapy, a lot of it, like, when I first started, it's like breathing practices. Like, I didn't know anything about that. Like, when I would have panic attacks, I'm like, you want to breathe more, and that actually elevates your heart rate. And then you learn that actually, like, the 4 square breathing sounds stupid. And you're like, oh, how could it work? And then you try it, and you're like, holy shit. Like, I'm saving myself all of this anxiety and potential, like, trip to the ER.
I was just going to say,
literally,
a trip to the ER.
Because I know how to breathe. And it's like, if you don't want to go to therapy, if you can't afford it, get on YouTube and, like, just Google, what the fuck do therapists teach you in therapy? Like, what, like, anything. Like, just search it. And so I think it all these things come down to intentionality. It's like, the answers are there. It's just a matter if, you know, you want to seek them out.
And it goes back to, like, the self-doubt thing, because I think for me personally too, and, like, a lot of people around me, it's like you're doubting that your body can, like, help you, or that you yourself can help yourself. You're like, I could do this, but, like, what if I don't do it right? What if I don't breathe right? What if I don't talk right in therapy? What if I don't do this thing? It's like, no, that doubt is what's holding you back from, like, the limitless potential that you have to feel like you're reconnecting with yourself.
For sure.
So
That also reminds me, like, when you talk about modalities, sometimes dating, like, I'll say therapist dating, but I don't mean, like, dating, but finding a therapist that you vibe with can be hard. And I think for a lot of people, they get discouraged that it's them. Oh, talk therapy is not going to work for me because I didn't vibe with this therapist and it's my fault we didn't vibe. When we're just humans, and, like, sometimes the vibe is right and sometimes the vibe is not right, and you have to shop around for those things.
It's true.
So it's like a combination of this confidence that there is something out there that will work, whether it's talk therapy or not, and then this separate piece, which is the intention to go out and find that thing that works.
Right. Speaking of self-doubt, they're, like, self-doubt now in either you two, Mel or Kay, that's holding you back from, I don't know, completing the magazine or taking the next step of the magazine or whatever it is that you're doing in coffee. Like, do you want to open your own coffee shop? Kay Mel Soul with Kay. Like, we want there to be a little bit of a challenging question or
The deep dark web of human connection.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, is there something that you can think about right now that you're not doing as a result of self-doubt that you could be doing, that you're vulnerable enough to share with us?
for me, I feel like I'm kind of in that pit of a lot of self-doubt right now, just because of the transition in life, and, like, Mel also kind of in a transition. I don't know if you feel the same way, but, like, it can be scary taking a leap in a new direction, whether it's you moving, like, physically moving to a new place, or metaphorically moving into a new chapter. Like, there's just a lot of imposter syndrome that I am experiencing personally, where I'm like, should I have stayed in my realm? Like, do I need to stay in my place of where I've been all this time? Or is it okay if I dip my toe into this other place, or is everybody judging me? Whatever. And that's how it kind of feels with Kay Mel Soul, is it's, like, hard to navigate being in the wellness world when I'm fairly new to it. But I have to remember that, like, I have all these connections to health and wellness, and I feel probably the strongest connection that I've ever felt to anything being here. But it is, like, that little thing in the back of my mind that's like, you don't belong here. Like, you haven't worked hard enough. You don't know enough to be here. And it's very hard. And it's also hard sometimes. I've made a lot of new connections in the wellness world, and I immediately felt like this, like, really tiny, like, I felt like, and I'm bringing back, like, a film term, but, like, you know, when you shoot really high, like, you have the camera up high and you're shooting low, and it's, like, supposed to be this, like, dominating factor. I feel like the camera's, like, so up high on me right now. Like, when I meet new people, I feel so tiny, and I'm like talking to them about what I'm doing, and they just it feels like they're towering over, judging. And, like, I try to have this connection with them, you know, where I'm like, I really like what you're doing and I want to learn from you, and they're like, well, you're not there yet. It's like a troll under the bridge, you know, like, and it's so hard for me to move past it and just be like, well, I'm up there with you. We're going to work hand in hand. It's like, I still feel like I'm trailing behind them a little bit. So that's my space right now, is just, like, the imposter syndrome, and it's hard to overcome. But what's helped me is meeting people who cheer me on,
Mm.
or also who I can cheer on, because we're like moving in the same path, but we're like doing different things, but we can like support each other. It's awesome, but it's just so hard to find.
For sure.
So
Nice. Thanks for sharing, Kay. What about you, Mel?
I have a few areas of self-doubt, I think. I do want to open my own coffee shop in the future. I haven't put a date or a timeline on that. I think when I'm confident that I can do it, and I'm blessed to have been connected to people now in the coffee industry for a while that would help me. So I know before I used to have a lot of self-doubt about if that was even possible. Now I'm confident in that aspect of where I could find help from, and even like how I would get the funds and whatnot. But I think I'm more scared of that's been my goal for the last, how old am I? Like 6 years of my life, like has been, I want to open a coffee shop one day. So the idea of accomplishing that is scary for me, because then I'm like, what's next? And I know something else will come from that. I'll have a new goal on the horizon or whatever, but I'm not too focused on that yet, but I do have self-doubt in that area. I guess that bleeds into my main area of self-doubt being like trusting myself and knowing that I can bounce back from any and everything with the support of the people in my life. And I think recently, within the last 6 months, I've really started dealing with a lot of anxiety. And before that, I used to say, like, oh yeah, I've been anxious. And now that I've actually truly felt like anxiety and had panic attacks and felt actual fear, I can say that before I was probably just nervous, had a little nervous anxiousness, but nothing like true anxiety. So dealing with that and trying to learn to trust myself that I'll be okay through that whole process is probably where I'm experiencing the most self-doubt, because I've never navigated this area of anxiety before, and wondering why it's coming now when I'm 25 and I'd never felt it before, wondering like what the trigger was, how can I cope with these things, and being scared that it's just going to be here forever. That's my biggest area of self-doubt. It's just trusting myself and getting through that and learning to cope with anxiety and those newer health things that have been coming up in my life recently.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing that.
This conversation reminds me a little bit about, like, when I first started my business, I felt all of the imposter syndrome. And I feel like there's this, I don't know if it's another like societal construct, which is there's always a right and there's always a wrong. And like you have to hold that dichotomy at all times. And now I feel like I'm getting into a place where it's like, actually, I could take multiple paths to reach the same destination, and either I'll accomplish the goal that I wanted, or I'll get a lesson that I really needed, and that will help me continue that path down to the goal that I'm looking at. And there is no really wrong way to live your own life, whether you're really, really in tune with your intuition or not. The things that you do and the things that you learn will turn you into the person that you're meant to become. And that's a little bit woo-woo for some people, I think, like a little bit too intangible and out there. But grounding myself in that when I reach a point where I'm like, I think I need to pivot here, and is this going to ruin my life? No, it will be fine. Or if it does absolutely ruin my life, I'll have learned something so valuable that I can build it back up again.
Amen, sister.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any closing words for me, love? What kind of themes did you pull out of this conversation? We got intention for sure.
Closing words for you?
No. Well, closing words for us.
Mm-hmm.
We the people.
What words have come up to you guys besides intention? What words? What's like
Themes.
the theme? Yeah, what's
Yeah.
the theme? Yeah, what do you think the theme has been? Push you to the.
What'd you learn from today?
Yeah, what did you learn?
What did you learn? Big ideas.
You will get a grade.
I would say
No pressure.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
There's a lot to unpack. Okay?
Elliot just
There's
didn't
a
want
lot
to answer the
unpack.
question, so he was like,
He's all, "What do
over
you
to you."
I think my like ADHD is so bad, like it definitely affects my memory. So I'm like, I know that I've been harping on so many words now. I'm like, besides
Vulnerability.
intention, yeah, vulnerability is a good one.
There's been
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thoughtfulness.
thoughtfulness, yeah.
Yeah, I think what was I gonna say?
Reciprocity.
Yeah, mutual
emotional intelligence.
Yes, those were some
Yeah.
keywords. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I was gonna say the aspect of connection changing as you grow older,
Mm-hmm.
and proximity was a big theme. Like when proximity is not as close as it was in public school, and you have the choice of who you're friends with, being thoughtful and intentional and vulnerable with those people in your life, no matter the frequency, but just keeping it consistent and alive, is a way to stay connected with those people.
Mm-hmm.
Seeking that emotional intelligence.
For sure.
Okay, so with themes of thoughtfulness, proximity, reciprocity, emotional intelligence, intention, like if you had a tip for listeners to go out in the world and make a connection, what would it be? How about I pass the ball to Elliot? Why
What
don't
about
you-
even a tip for yourself?
a tip to your tomorrow self.
For some reason, I wanted to say go with your gut, but I don't really know. Are you gonna say that?
I was gonna say go with your gut.
Oh, dang,
Yeah.
dude.
Human connection.
So okay, but sometimes here's the problem with that, because sometimes I think that my gut is wrong because I think I'm so anxious and I talk shit to myself all the time that I'm like, that can't be right. And then I'm thinking, okay, like with health stuff, I'm like, okay, that feeling is not good. And then I go to the doctor and they're like, bro, you're fine. I'm like, are you sure? And then like there's another thing and I'm like, you're fine. It's like this back and forth. So I, for some reason, even though it's so random, like the tip was go with your gut. What does that have to do with anything we're talking about? I think it's just like to act, it's like to do, to be, to like act now, do now, be now. Like I'm thinking about Joe, my friend Joe, the guy that calls me. He called me yesterday. I didn't answer the phone. I was busy. Today, as soon as we get done with this podcast, I'm going to call him because he's my friend and he cares about me and he loves me, and he called me and I didn't answer. And I like, how long are you going to let that go? Like, there's no reason to let that go another day. Like, you need to call him today and say, I'm sorry that I missed your call. What's up, dude? How are you? Like, how was your day? So my tip to myself and to the audience always is like, go now, do the thing now, be the thing now. Even if you fail, like that's the problem. It's like I haven't failed enough. You haven't failed enough because you haven't tried enough. If you fail, you keep telling me like you will learn something. Like a failure is just an opportunity to learn.
It's a data point.
And it's also success in a way because it tells you what you need to know, and then you just go.
And
So
it's the same thing kind of tying back to when you're talking about therapy. Like the hardest thing is to get started, which is what Kay said.
for sure,
Getting started is so difficult. And we were talking a little bit about this, just you and I, the other day. Going from zero to moving is the hardest part, like an actual physical law of motion.
Right.
Once you're moving, even if you're going in the wrong direction, you're already moving and you can just guide that momentum in a different direction.
correct. And like then it started feeling like this like insurmountable thing, like finding guests and like thinking of like
The
putting it on
name.
Spotify and what
What's
the
the
name is,
theme?
what's the theme, like how are we gonna get this podcast equipment set up, and it's like, is it ever gonna happen? And that was difficult, and now it's here, and this is up, and now I can see the 3rd episode and the 20th episode and the 100th episode, and it's like now we're rolling, and just keep the ball rolling, you know. So there's a lot of tips there,
That was a good one.
but yeah. Are we gonna let Kay
Yeah.
and
Any other
Mel?
tips?
No, we're not gonna let you. We're gonna make you.
Fall and
Tips.
tell.
Can you repeat the question? Tips
If
on
you
food.
had to well, Elliot kind of turned the question a little bit. A tip for yourself and or a tip for someone listening, staying kind of loosely grounded in our themes of intention, reciprocity, thoughtfulness, to just someone who wants to go out and make a connection, even if it fails, whether it's in business, in love, in life, if you had a tip.
I'm going to build off that one and say stay open. Go with your gut. I had one more. Don't overthink it.
Nice.
Basically what you said, but
Nice.
reworded. I
Love it.
think I always worry about being too much. I overthink that a lot. So if you're feeling like texting your friend that you love them and sending them a paragraph message about how you saw a book that they gave to you and cried about it, seeing it because it reminded you of them, text them. Like, why? Oh, they're going to think I'm cheesy. They're going to, like, it's cringy. Even I took that into relationships. Why would you tone yourself down in a romantic sense, in a romantic relationship, by denying those desires for yourself? If you want to double text somebody, don't overthink it. Go with your gut. Do it. If you're doing it with a wrong intention, like, I don't know, then maybe don't do it. I guess that's where the gut aspect comes in. But if it feels right to you, go with your gut. Don't overthink it, and stay open to other people, letting them in and seeing where that goes.
Yeah, all you have to do is hold the mirror up to yourself. Like, wouldn't you like that if a friend that you haven't maybe spoken to in a little bit reached out to you and was like, hey, I read this book and it reminded me of you. I just want to say that I miss you and I love you. That would be awesome.
Maybe.
I'm not gonna be like, bro, it's fucking horny and we're not friends.
Yeah.
It's not,
Loser.
That's not gonna happen. So, hell yeah, good tips.
Yeah, I was literally gonna say when Sam first asked the question, I was gonna say just do it and trust yourself. I think I was super scared to do the glow, like just to bring that in, because like that was like one thing where I was like, I'm like scared to make friends or like to meet new people, and I was like so scared. I was shaking, my stomach was hurting like before the first one, because all the signups were like people I didn't know. I mean, there were like maybe one or two people I knew, and I was like, this is scary. And I was like, just trust yourself, you got this. And I was like, but what if I'm weird? And I'm like, just trust yourself. And then I went and trusted myself, but also other people, and it created this like really nice little flowing environment. And so if you want to make friends, if you want to make connections, if you want to reconnect with your family, if you want to reconnect with yourself, it just starts within and just doing it. Like you guys said, go with your gut.
That's what's up.
I think mine is to be authentic, which is kind of what you're saying, Mel. Like, if you want to double text somebody and they don't like it, they're maybe not the person that you should spend the rest of your life with. Like, Elliot and I literally text all the time.
It's true.
We
really
are texting literally all the time, and I love it that way. And we have been married almost 5 years, and we text all the fucking time. So that's awesome. The second one is get out of your comfort zone. And it's okay. Like, when I think about getting out of your comfort zone when it comes to connection, it's kind of like like hitting up a stranger. Like, hey, how are you today? Or, oh, I'm just sitting at the bar and you're sitting at the bar. Like, what are you working on? And if they don't want to talk to you, it'll be really obvious. And like, it's totally fine. You're not probably ever going to see them again. And it's not like you're a bad person because that person didn't want to engage with you. And sometimes it works out really well. Like Elliot mentioned earlier, we just started chatting with a girl on the street, literally outside a bar. And now we're really great friends with her and her boyfriend. And that's awesome.
Two things. A confession. You said we text all the time. So this morning I got up really early to play golf. So Sam and I've been apart for 4 hours. And I like get my phone out and I like read this text and it says, miss you so much. And I was like, why do you miss me? Like, it's been 4 hours. And I was like, wait, that's so rude. I was like, I miss you too. What the heck? I was like, I miss you too. And it was so sweet. I was like, it's been 4 hours. I'm like, we fucking text. I'm like golfing. I'm like, and you text me like 5 times. And I'm like, I'm not even, I'm not annoyed. Why would I be annoyed? Like, I'm so grateful that you love me. Like, that's such a big deal, you know? And also, before we started doing the podcast, or when I was telling you about doing my own thing, I was like, you know, like big podcasts or whatever vlogs like have like this is sponsored by and it's like a big company, right? I'm like, why can't we have every episode be sponsored by the motherfuckers that are here doing the thing that they love? So this episode, and you can take this out if you want, but I don't want to.
I'm working on my radio voice. This episode is sponsored by the 20ToLife magazine and Como El Sol Wellness.
Exactly. That's who this fucking episode is sponsored by.
I love that.
Yes. At Como El Sol Wellness. Right?
We're going to put all the things in the description of the podcast. Please like and subscribe, share with your friends. That you can buy a 20ToLife magazine. We're going to plug Mel.
Yes, please. I'm working on getting it up online, so if anyone out of town wants it, then they can actually get it shipped to them. But so TBD, so follow the...
Well, we don't know when this is going to go live, so...
Oh, cool. Maybe it'll be ready.
Also, you can walk in a Novel Point, get yourself a really delicious Cascara cream soda, and also read the magazine in the coffee shop for free.
Yes, exactly.
So that's cool.
That's true. You could,
Right? Library style. Yeah. Don't take it home. Please leave it for other people.
Also, is it just 20ToLife? Mag?
20ToLife mag.
Sick.
Like 20.
Sweet.
2Life mag. Yeah.
Awesome. You wanna close?
Thanks, gals.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sam and I want to thank you so much for listening to Something More Human. If you're enjoying the podcast and want to support us, there are plenty of no-cost, minimal effort ways you can do so.
For starters, you can subscribe to the show on your favorite listening platform. You can leave us a 5-star review, drop us a comment with a topic you'd like to hear us discuss in an upcoming episode, and you can also keep up with us on Instagram and TikTok. Give us a follow there at Something More Human. Thanks so much.
Thank you.